Welcome to Jude, the podcast. I'm David Jude. I'm your host for the show, and thank you again for tuning in and listening. Thank you again for all your downloads and shares and listens and everything you're doing to help us keep the show alive. Without you, we couldn't keep it going. So thank you. Well, as always, we have another exciting show for you. Introducing our friend Steve Auvenshine to you all. Steve is a longtime friend of mine, but that's not really why he's on the show. What's interesting about Steve is he is a custom knife builder. He's been building custom knives for 30 years. Beautiful artistry. He may not call himself an artist, but if you see his products, you would recognize that he truly is an artist. And by the way, to get one of Steve's knives, you better be prepared to wait for a while. Some of his products, he has about a 2-year waiting list before you can get one of his knives. That's right. You want one, you're going to have to wait for it because he's got a backlog of getting those orders done. Incredibly talented guy. Something else about Steve that you're going to find interesting in this story, he's a prop maker and an armorer for Hollywood. Been in all kinds of movies, or at least associated with a bunch of movies. Things like the Jurassic World series, Jumanji, and all the others. He made props and made knives and assisted on set with those movies. Master and Commander. Remember that thing from way back when? Man, what an awesome movie. The Pale Blue Eye. Oh, love that. Love that show. 1923, which is part of the Yellowstone series, and several more. So Steve's a prop maker for Hollywood, custom knife maker, and armorer. All these things he's got going on. It's a fascinating story. Anyway, we're glad to have him on the show, and we're glad to share his talents and expertise with you. I think you'll find it an interesting story. You can find all of Steve's social media sites in the show notes. And while you're there, you might as well check out our sponsors too. They help keep the show going. Enjoy the episode. More guests to come. Thanks again, everybody. Yeah. All good, man. So you just got back from Gettysburg.
I did. That was a good show. It always is every year.
Yeah.
It's become more of a family reunion for my family.
For your actual family.
For my actual family. I started going there, 20 years ago. They have the Lord Nelson's Gallery in Gettysburg has a show every year called History Meets the Arts.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of historical painters, what I affectionately call flat artists. They do flat things.
Like the paintings, right?
Right. And they love it when I do that.
Yeah.
So just so you know, if you meet a
flat artist,
famous painter, you can call him a flat artist or her and see how that goes over.
All right.
But most take it in good humor. There are a few that maybe not so much.
I know Flat Stanley from the old elementary.
Right?
Yeah.
Same. Now I will say these are brilliant painters, top of their game, some of the best in the country, and their prices
reflective of that.
Yeah, they do. And so right next to them is me and my little knives, and I feel a little overwhelmed at what's around me. But
that's humility.
Yeah,
you're being humble.
The other artists, we get along. We've been doing this for 20-something years, and that's the family reunion I'm talking about.
Oh yeah,
and it's just so much fun to see them. And some days, some shows at that place, I have great shows to sell out, and some not so much. I might sell 3 or 4, and you just never know.
Yeah,
and you don't know what people are looking for. So this was a good show. I sold plenty, and my goal for that show is to sell enough to pay for the travel, pay for the show, and have a little left over. And my daughter and son-in-law come down from Fredericksburg, Maryland, and or Virginia. Sorry, I apologize if you guys listen to this.
Yeah,
wow,
which we hope they do.
Yeah, I'll make them. But and the reason I said Fredericksburg, Maryland, right now Fort Frederick's having their market fair this last weekend, and a lot of my friends are there. So anyway, Fort Freddy, Maryland. So yeah, it was a good show. They came down and we had a good time. It's exhausting.
Yeah, no doubt.
For me, I don't think it is as much for them, but,
well, it's a lot to set up and to host those type of things over a couple of days.
It's a lot of extroverting. So, you know, I mean, let's be honest, as a knife maker, you know, I've been doing this for 30 years and, have pretty good reputation. Knives have ended up in some pretty big name movies. And so the knives demand a premium, not as much as some, but more than others.
Right.
You can buy a chef's knife at Walmart, right? And it will cut.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you want to cut your onion up in pieces, it'll do it. And you can get that for $15 probably. Well, you're going to pay more than that for mine.
Yeah.
So what people are buying, number one, is quality, right? Heirloom quality. It's going to be passed down generations. But the other thing is they're buying the story, right? They're buying a piece of me, right? And I get that because I've bought paintings from some of these artists. And I used to have some neat stuff on the walls. I had, what was that Frankfurt artist, Paul Sawyer?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, I had Paul Sawyer's everywhere because I loved his work. But then I met these other artists. And I was like, I don't want Paul Sawyer because I don't know Paul. Yeah. But I do know David.
Yep.
Right. And so when I look at David's painting, it's like, yeah, that's a piece of him.
Yeah.
Right. Or Pamela White. That's a piece of her. And so it means more. Yeah. So it extrapolates over to knives. Right. Sure. So if somebody's using one of my knives, they know me. They have met me most of the time. Sometimes it's through Instagram or whatever. But so they're buying you and your story. Yeah. And so you have to extrovert a lot, almost constantly. And it's great. I'm glad that I get that opportunity and that people are willing to come talk to me, you know. But it is tiring. It's exhausting. We talk about that almost every show that we've done has come back to that same thing to say it's the people. Business is no different. It's the people. Right. I've struggled with that, right, to say they're going to hire the company. Well, no one really hires the company. They're hiring the person. And so we've had to make a little shift on that. But your words are echoing because every guest that's sitting in that chair, no matter what they're doing, has come back to say the same thing. And they're actually looking for the community. That connection to community was a big topic that we've ran into every time. And yeah, you're hitting it right on the head. That's what people are looking for. It is. And like I said, they're buying a piece of you. Yep. And if you don't present that and give that, either at a big show where there's more knife makers, they may go to the next table. Yeah. Right. Where somebody's willing to talk to them. Yeah. And tell them what kind of steel you used, how you got into it. You know, you may have to listen to, I don't know, at an average show, 15 or 20 tell you how their grandfather made knives out of railroad spikes and want to know if you do that. Yeah. You know, man, that's good steel. You ought to try that. Well, buddy, you know, I did 30 years ago. And I appreciate that. I bet your grandfather made some good looking knives. Yeah. I'd love to see them. If you got any with you, I'd love to see them. And thankfully they don't most of the time. Yeah. But you know, without those grandfathers standing over a forge and making knives, would I be here now? Right. Maybe not. Maybe not. So, and if I don't begrudge people starting out with railroad knives, you know, railroad spike knives. That's a good way to start. And the steel's cheap, right? Yeah. Figure out your work. I had a young maker come to me one time years ago, and he wanted me to critique his work. And frankly, his forging was amateurish, but he had spent like $75 for handle scales. And he couldn't figure out why he couldn't sell this knife for $75. And I said, well, you want me to be honest? He said, yeah. I said, son, you're putting lipstick on a pig. Yeah. You know, start with firewood on these handles. That way you can charge $25 like I did 35 years ago, and somebody will want to support you.
Yeah.
And say, let me have that.
I can do it for $25.
Yeah. I'll carry that camping or, whatever. But if you're putting $75 handle scales on a $25 knife, it's still a $25 knife. It's hard to get around that. So, my advice to him and to any new maker is, take a class, take multiple classes. 1 week in a class or even a weekend will exponentially speed up your learning process than watching YouTube videos. YouTube's great. I learned how to change a breaker out in my breaker box watching YouTube, right? And that's great.
Yeah.
But, when it comes to something as I don't want to say delicate because it's not necessarily, but the finishing can be. But when it comes to something as complicated as making a knife, you watch a YouTube video, you're not an expert.
Yeah.
Right? You might watch 10.
Or a TV show.
Let's not even talk about that. I don't even want to go there.
That'll be it. There's plenty to talk about without going there.
Yeah. And although I will say this one thing, that show has been good for custom knife makers. It has introduced people to the custom knife world.
Very entertaining.
So that is good. And I appreciate the show for that.
I admire artists, whether it's a musician or a flat artist, right?
Yeah.
For those that would be listening.
Right.
Or you as a knife maker, you see an end product from a different perspective than maybe the average person does, right? And so I can relate it to music in a way, although I'm very reluctant to make that comparison. But there's just I don't know how to describe it. It's almost as if you see the finished product in reverse. You know what you're trying to create, but it's not as easy as just making the knife. There's all these processes. You almost have to me, it's like you build it in reverse, like you'd make a painting almost in reverse.
Well, it's funny that
you
would mention that often, and I do it every time for the film knives. I get a request to make a knife for a film, and usually the prop master, maybe in conjunction with the art director, will give me an idea of what they are thinking. They'll give me a color palette. They'll give me size. They'll give me style. And they'll say, what do you think? And I'll say, well, give me a day and I'll get back to you. So to your point, I do watercolors.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll draw the knife out in watercolor and send them that image and say, this is what I'm thinking. And they can like it or they can tweak it. They may tweak it a dozen times. That's why we have to charge them a little more, to be honest, because of all the tweaking. But I do watercolors very often on a big knife. If I'm doing a big project, it's going to take me a week, 2 weeks. I've had knives that take a month. I'll do a watercolor first, drawing, get all the dimensions, do the watercolor, try to figure out what palette I'm going for color-wise. And a knife, to me, this sounds silly, but a knife needs to either be sexy or mean, right?
I've never really thought of it that way, but as you think about it, as you just said that, you're like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
If you see a fighting knife and you just go, damn, that's a mean looking son of a buck.
Yeah.
Right. But no pun intended.
No copyright infringements
there. No copyright infringements there. Now, if you can get sexy and mean in the same knife, then somebody can't walk past your table and not pick it up. They just can't, right?
Yeah.
They walk by and they go, "Oh, wait a minute.
What is that?
Hold on, I gotta look at that."
How did you get into knives? I know you said 30 years ago, and
yeah,
I didn't. I guess knowing each other for a while, just thought, well, Steve makes knives, and then as you learn more about it, you're like, no, Steve didn't just make knives. How did you get there?
You remember Wayne Estes from Bourbon County?
Mm-hmm.
He and I became friends through our past jobs, and he was making, and still does make, a fine flintlock rifle. And I said I wanted to make knives. I'd always been interested in knives, and that was just something I wanted to do. So he introduced me to Frank House, who became my guru, my mentor in knife making. like I said, 30 years ago, over 30 years now.
And I know who the players are, but I don't know those relationships. So I thought that came years down the road. So you and Frank have known each other for a long time then.
Yeah. Since 91, 92.
Okay.
Yeah. And so went to his shop and he gave me the basics, the forging, the temper, the how to harden temper, the look. He's an artist in every sense of the word. And could do it all. He's done sculpture. He's done paintings. He's an artist. And, so he was very early on me to, of course, he didn't say sexy or mean, but, to think about design and think about how that thing looks. Don't just make a butter knife, or something you might see at Walmart. Right. Mm-hmm. And like the new Corvette, I tear pictures out of magazines a lot of times of sports cars and other things because they spend millions of dollars with designers.
Yep.
Well, I don't have to do that. I can tear the page out of the book and pin it up on the wall. And this last Bowie knife I made was inspired by the new Corvette. Now, somebody else walking by my table is not going to say, hey, that looks like the new. No, it's not going to happen. But in my mind, I got some inspiration from that. And, a good sports car should look like it's going fast, sitting still.
Right.
Right. They do that on purpose. Well, that knife should be the same way. It should flow, right? And nothing should stop your eye, and it should flow all the way from one end to the other. If you achieve that, that's the first thing, right? The bolster, the handle, they all have to match up. The guard can't get in the way. The guard can complement it, but it can't get in the way of that and stop your eye, where you go, oh, wait a minute, what's that? So he got me started right, which is great. And fast forward, we're still friends. We talk almost every week, and I still bounce stuff off of him, and he sometimes gets very curt. He will not hold back. And
that's the best kind of friend to have.
It is. It absolutely, especially when you need a mentor in what I'm doing, right?
Right.
I need somebody that will, bust me up a little bit and say, hey, this sucks. What were you thinking here? Now that hadn't happened in 10, 15 years, but,
right.
But yeah, he was a great inspiration and still a great friend.
So we're fast forwarding a little bit just because of time. I don't want to take up all night with this, but let's get into where your knives have featured. Because so far to our listeners, we just talked about you make knives. Well, knowing you and knowing your knives, it's not just making knives. There's a little bit more to it. So let's start with, do you still have a 2-year waiting list for your knives?
For certain knives.
Oh, okay.
And that's just selfish on my part, to be honest. The Jurassic World knife, which is where you're wanting to go probably for one of the knives.
A little bit, yeah.
That knife is probably 2 years. Now I could shorten that up, right? I could shorten that waiting list up if I made that knife every day.
Right.
I would quit in a month. Right. I'd be done.
Right.
Because I cannot do the same thing every day.
We are so glad to have Ugly Tint as a sponsor to the show. My longtime friend Kenny Dietrich is a subject matter expert in modern survival, bushcrafting, and preparedness. As he challenges us on the show, be prepared for the disaster most likely to happen to you. But let me tell you, Ugly Tint is so much more than just disaster preparedness. You need to check out the website at uglytent.com. That's UGLYTENT.com for a complete list of their products, their classes, and all the services that Kenny offers. There's a lot that I think you'll find interesting at uglytent.com. Again, just a neat place to go. So whether it's for camping, maybe it's a hike, maybe it's just trying to be in the outdoors for a little bit, uglytent.com is filled with the products and the services that you want. Not to mention you have a true expert as a resource for you. Listen, while you're there, use the promo code JUDE, that's lowercase JUDE, and that code will get you 10% off your total purchase. That's a pretty good deal for some really cool stuff. Anyway, check out Kenny at uglytent.com. Which is the mind of the artist. That's where we're going with this, right? Is talk about your mind as the artist.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I don't think at any point in here you will hear me call myself an artist. Right?
Correct. I know.
And I believe that's for others to determine.
Correct.
If you call yourself that, you might be, but I don't think it's my place to call me that. And I've been called everything but a milk cow, and
right.
I can take it all.
Right.
But if somebody says, hey, that's art, then I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then,
I always look at it, that's something that keeps you hungry, right? If you started calling yourself whatever title that you were trying to achieve, you've kind of caught the carrot.
Right. In your mind.
In your mind.
In your own mind, you have caught the carrot. Right.
In your own mind.
Yeah.
That's a good distinction.
Yeah. Now, I like this Bowie knife, this last one, and I keep bringing it. It's not it is different than anything else, but they all are. I did something different. I got out of my comfort zone. I did a little something different. The one before that was the same. And the whole idea is to push yourself. Mm-hmm. And it's a heck of a lot more fun too when you go into the shop and you're working on this really intricate Bowie knife or a folding knife, with double bolsters. I'm in the process of making 2 with sterling silver bolsters, double bolster, one on each end. It's sterling silver, 18 karat gold, and mother of pearl. I mean, it is everything. And you go into the shop and work on that. That's kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
You're excited about that.
Yeah.
If you're doing one knife every day for a year,
yeah,
that's not happening.
Right.
I would probably keep a bottle of bourbon in the shop and never get any work done. Just dreading having to do it again.
Right.
I love that knife, the Jurassic World knife. What we're talking about is I made the knife that Chris Pratt carried. I keep banging the table. Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, that knife right there. Boy, you're good. And that was actually the prototype. That's not the final knife, but it's close. So I had to compete for that job. The prop master called me up, said, Steve, here's what we're looking for. We want a modern fighting knife with an old school feel. And so that was the prototype I sent him, and that won the bid, so to speak.
Right.
There were some other folks in it. There's a great story there too. But then they had some tweaks. Said, okay, we like everything. We especially like the handle, that curly maple. Mm-hmm. The other entries were micarta, plastic. Basically they were using a production knife.
Yeah.
Not a handmade knife. Now, some of these companies did some handwork, but mine was the only fully handmade knife. So
where do you source those materials? I mean, you just mentioned the current knife that you're making, the double bolsters, whatever else, yeah. And then this. You don't tell me specifics. I'm just saying that's part of your craft, right?
Yeah, specifics are fine. I have no problem with that. A lot of the curly maple, I go to shows and they'll have handle material for sale. I've been to the Blade Show and they have all kinds of that's more the current version of that knife. You can see it's got plunge lines and a grind line as compared to the other one. It was dead flat grind. So anyway, they have handle material shows, but I've been known to walk by a wood pile at somebody's house and see a stick of firewood. Mm-hmm. Recently it was a piece of curly walnut. And I said, can I have that? And they were like, yeah, what are you going to do with it? I said, no, it's going to be a knife handle eventually. Yeah. It depends on how green it is. I'm a wood hoarder, scavenger. Yeah. But lately, the last 5-7 years, I bought my blanks, scales in block form and then turn them into the handle.
So that's called like a scale for that, that raw product?
Yeah, because that's a full tang knife. That tang, the part we can't see under that wood is the tang, and it's a full tang. If you would turn it on its side and looked down the spine, you would see the tang in the blade.
Right.
As opposed to a hidden tang or a stick tang or one of the others.
I guess when I'm listening to you and then seeing that, and we're talking about sourcing materials, my first thought goes to like custom guitar shops. You know, they're always looking for that burled wood, you know, the grain that comes in some of the guitars that are made specifically to like
absolutely. Knife makers are no different.
Yeah. Seems like you'd source a lot of there. They start off as a big square, right?
Right.
And then cut off the pieces and whatever else, and it'd be left of some of this stuff.
The good, reputable knife scale vendors out there do that. They source from all over the world. You get some really cool stuff, and they have it in blocks. And it's not cheap for us because we're buying it small, but you get better stuff, and you can look at it even online. You know, if I buy a block, I cut into that block, there may be a void in the middle of it. The limb was growing at one point and they grew around it. Where I buy scales, I might pay $7,500, $100 for a set of scales, but I know I can look at both sides. They're clean.
I see.
And they're perfect.
Yeah.
And I don't have to worry about it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And a lot of these guys are stabilizing the wood. They're sucking resin into the pores, and it's clear, but they're sucking resin into the pores and making it real hard and durable.
So when people order a knife from you, are they getting so specific to order that handle, or are they leaving that up to you? And I guess what I'm saying is in your shop, I imagine at this point you have an inventory of just stuff. And are you left with the autonomy to say, man, this knife is just speaking to me that it needs this?
I do that a lot. Now on that knife, I've had several requests to make it with a different wood or micarta handle, and I just won't. That knife was the Jurassic World knife. It had curly maple scales on it. That's what it's going to get. If you get it from me, that's what it's going to be.
Are you limited to that, or you still have the choice to change it?
Because and I don't know legally how this works. I don't sell that knife as the Jurassic World knife. There's there's not an ad in Blade Magazine for the Jurassic World knife, because I'm sure somebody would want a lot of money for that, right? So what I say is that is a knife like I made for the movie Jurassic World. And
do you find that the customers like that authenticity of getting that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, there's always a few that want micarta handle, or they want, and I say, I'm sorry, I can't, I won't. That knife was made with that kind of handle, and that's all I'm going to put on it. If it's got my name on it, that's what it's going to have. Yeah.
I like that. I if I'm thinking of this as a customer, that's exactly how I would feel about it.
Yeah. And, I've had some requests that I just have to turn down. Not long ago, you can see the antler. Antlers have a pedicle next to the skull. That's that little flower or whatever.
Naughty little piece
right there. That's called a pedicle. He wanted me to turn the antler around and stick the blade in that pedicle and make that the guard. Between you and me and the fence post, that's just us talking here.
Right.
That'd be ugly as hell, and I'm not going to do it. And I said, sir, I'm sorry. That's not the kind of knife I make. But if there's plenty of knife makers out there to do it. Yeah. So, sometimes you upset people, but, your brand is important.
Well, that's it.
Your brand is important. And if it's got my name on it, I have to like it when it leaves the shop. If I don't like it, then I shouldn't have my name on it.
Which speaks to why you have a waiting list for certain knives, is because of that attention to your brand.
I think so. I hope so. And I think that's a big deal. To not just do everything that comes down the pike, right? You have to, who was it said a man's got to know his limitations? Right. Was it Clint Eastwood?
Yeah, I think it was.
Clint Eastwood.
Dirty Harry?
Yeah. And a man's got to know his limitations.
That is a beautiful knife, isn't it?
It is. I'm a little partial to it.
Hey, look, I liked it. Yeah.
Oh, well, good. There you go. You do like it.
How big is that knife?
10 inches overall. which I think is the sweet spot for what they wanted, a fighting knife. K-bar's a little longer than that.
Okay.
Not much, but a little. So it's hard to argue that the K-bar is not a fighting knife. But that's also handy enough at camp. You cut your bologna and make a sandwich. And it's not just huge. So yeah, I had autonomy to do pretty much what I wanted. And that's what I came up with. And when he said old school, I really felt like he didn't say it, but that's kind of what he was going for. He'd seen my knives before. And there's nothing more old school than curly maple. And that's with an aqua fortis stain, nitric acid stained like they did 250 years ago.
Yeah.
So if that's not old school, I don't know what is.
So we need to transition into a little bit of that. So, and you'll correct me here as I go, but I associate you, with your artistry, and I'll call you that, with period pieces, right? And so that's important for you to say. The stain technique that you're using is 250 years old. So you're thinking about hiring a private investigator, huh? Think knowledge, experience, and trust. Think DPJ Consulting. Listen, we're the folks you want on your team. Whether it's a criminal matter, corporate, or an administrative issue, or maybe something more personal, you need to make the right choice for you. Our house of expertise at DPJ Consulting can help you with investigations, and that can mean a whole lot of different things. Pre-employment background checks, personal VIP security, and so much more. Check us out at dpjconsulting.com. Follow us on all of our social media platforms, or give us a call at 855-TEAM-DPJ. That's 855-TEAM-DPJ. Give us a call. It costs nothing to talk. It costs you everything if we don't.
It is. And with maple, it is the only stain I'll use. It has been used on flintlock rifles for as long as, a very long time. Back into the 1700s, certainly early 1700s. It's an acid that you just wipe on the wood when it's white, and it turns it a baby poop greenish brown. It's really ugly.
Yeah.
Then you heat it with a heat gun or a torch, and it turns this kind of golden brown, like a nice biscuit. And then when you oil it, you get that right there, that shiny, the grain pops.
Right.
Does all the things you want it to do. Yeah.
So when somebody says, why are your knives so expensive? It's because David's not making it. It's because you know those techniques to make it look like that.
Right. And I always said, and I still say, the difference between a pro and an amateur is pro knows how to fix his mistakes. And the amateur just quits. Right. But I figure in 30 years, I've made every mistake that's possible. And
you've jinxed yourself. And
I guarantee it. I'll do another one. Nothing, that's going to happen, but I know how to fix them.
Yeah.
Right. And there's, let's be honest, there's probably a mistake in every knife, right? I have never made the perfect knife.
Yeah. You're human.
You can't if you're doing it by hand. Well, maybe some can. I don't know.
Right.
I can't.
Right.
Now, probably nobody could find it but me. And that's good, right? I don't want it glaring. But, almost in everything, there's a little something that I would have done different or, but usually in the end, you can't see it, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking major mistakes like, putting the handle on the wrong end or something silly. But there's always something that, and if there weren't, why would you make another one?
Yeah.
As soon as I make a perfect one, I might quit. If it went together just right and it was flawless, I don't see that happening.
Now, these are the bolsters?
No, right? those are pins.
Pins. Do you make the pins?
I do. Yeah. There are companies that make those. And when I made that one, for the show, I included those mosaic pins, just because I thought it'd be cool. And, So I learned YouTube, by the way.
Yeah.
I learned how to make those pins, and now I make them all the time. And it's not rocket science. It's
now for Jurassic World, you didn't just make one knife; you had to make several, right?
I had to make 3. I had to make one real sharp knife, and when I say not real sharp, but one real sharpened knife, and 2 dull knives, and prop knives. And then they send those off and get rubbers made. So they had 30 rubbers made in different degrees of hardness, right? So you got a hard rubber, a soft rubber, and a dead soft rubber. So stunt guys and gals, they are not keen on having a hard piece of steel in their belt if they have to take a fall, right? Yeah. So they make that gear out of soft rubber. And so you make sure that, stunt person's got the right degree of rubber on. If they're going to do a fight, you want a harder rubber because the floppy rubber, it looks kind of silly, So you get a harder rubber that's, if you hit them in the head with it, it's probably going to sting, but it's not going to hurt. It's not going to kill you, right? So you have the different degrees of rubber. And then, of course, there were 3 movies, and they needed 3 each time. So ended up making 9 for the production.
Now, you were saying earlier that the knives is what got you into making the props for Hollywood.
It was.
I was thinking it was the long rifles.
No, it was – you're not far off. It was my relationship with Frank House.
Yeah, Frank got you there, right?
Yeah, and that was the knives, right?
Okay.
That's I was working with him learning to make knives. And he did the rifle for Mel Gibson in The Patriot. And what else? I think the powder horn, and his wife did the quilled work or the strap for the horn. I hope I'm not screwing that up, but I think that's right. And so he then got called to go to North Carolina for the Patriot. No, wait, it's backwards. Yes, that was the call for the Patriot. But he got the call to be the armorer, not just to make the gun, but to come down and stay as an armorer.
And how do you get from there? How do you go from making that to suddenly being the armorer for a major motion picture?
Well, with Frank, a dear friend of mine was armorer on that show. He wasn't. I didn't know him at the time. I know him now. I've worked with him a couple times. Worked for him a couple times. A fantastic armorer, one of the best in the business, Harry Lou. And Frank was very knowledgeable in flintlocks, where that's kind of a niche genre, right? Mm-hmm. So I think Harry realized that it would be great to have Frank on board, and got production to approve Frank, and then they needed another one. So they brought another flintlock guy in. And so when Frank got back from that show, he was there for 4 weeks as an armorer. And I told him, I said, I was kind of upset with him. I said, "Why didn't you take me, dude?" He said, "Well, you're working. You can't get off." I said, "Well, try me." Careful what you ask for.
Yeah.
So fast forward, that was 99. So fast forward to 2003, he called me and said, "Steve, put your money where your mouth is." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "We're going to go to Mexico and work a movie." I said, "Okay." And I just started with the task force, and didn't have a security clearance yet. And that takes about a month. So it was real good timing, actually. Both agencies said, "Go for it." And so for 5 weeks, I went to Mexico and filmed Master and Commander with Russell Crowe.
Yeah. And I thought that was the first one.
Yeah, that was my first one. And ran the guns on that. And for 2 weeks, ran them by myself. Frank had to come back. And so that was literally trial by fire. It's a great story. A lot of people that listen to this may have heard it if they've talked to me at all.
Right.
But it is a good story. Frank and I leave out of Bourbon County, Kentucky at, 8 in the morning. We go to Lexington Airport. I meet Frank. He's come up from Western Kentucky. And we get on a plane about 9 o'clock. We land in San Diego, California. And that's 4 hours later. So 5 hours later, I was in my bed in Paris. 5 hours later, I'm in San Diego, California.
Mm-hmm.
So I grabbed my duffel bag, old Army duffel bags, got everything in it, including all my gun tools and everything. I was sure we were going to get flagged by the TSA. Did not. I don't know if that's a testament to their ineptitude or how well I clean my goods, but we'll let that go. So Frank and I walk out, and I've got my duffel bag. He's got a couple duffel bags, and we are like a lost ball in high weeds, right? Well, again, 5 hours earlier, I was in bed in Paris, Kentucky. And all of a sudden, we see this young Hispanic man, and he's got a little sign. You've seen them in airports, and it's got your name on it. It said House Auvenshine. And I said, Frank, unless there's somebody with a weird name, I said, that's us.
Yeah.
And he said, well, let's go. So we pointed at the young man and said, that's us. So he put us in a white panel van. No markings, nondescript panel van.
Tijuana, here we come.
Well, you're not wrong.
I know, it's across the border.
Yeah. So, so we're in this thing, and
could be a donkey show, could be a major motion
you never
picture.
Know.
You just don't know.
Never know. So we're riding. We go across the border really easy because he recognized. I guess they recognized the van, and I think we did have to show him driver's license. Now this is post 9/11,
right?
Right. This is after all that, but we flew through the border, and we're going gravel, dirt roads through Tijuana. And I look at Frank, and I'm like, Frank, are we sure we know where we're going? He said, I guess. Let's just find out what happens. I said, all right. So sure enough, we get out of there, and we're heading on down toward Ensenada. Rosarita's on the way. Rosarita's where we're going. That's where the big stage is. That's where the big studio lot is. It's where they filmed Titanic. It's huge. And so sure enough, we pull in, and I knew enough Spanish to get him to take us to the prop shop. And we roll into the prop shop, and we're getting our bags out, and here comes a golf cart as fast as a golf cart will come. And he screeches to a stop, and he says, throw your stuff in the prop house. We got to go. And I didn't know the guy.
Yeah.
Now, Frank did. He said, hey, Doug. Now, Frank, he's not much different than me, maybe even a little slower talker, but he says, hey, Doug, how's it going? Get your stuff in there. We got to go. So we realize, okay. So we're throwing it in there. And so there's a 2-seat golf cart. Frank's in the front. I'm in the second seat. And Doug Harlocker is telling Frank that his cannoneer had left the night before and said, Frank, I need you all to run the cannons. Can you do that? And Frank said, well, yeah, we can do that. And my eyes, I'm sure, they speak. Now, understand that 7 hours before, I was asleep in my bed in Paris, Kentucky.
Next thing you know, you're running a cannon.
Next thing I know, I'm on a sound stage with Russell Crowe and other people I've seen on TV and movies, and I'm running cannons. Well, it turns out these cannons are nothing but a big flintlock rifle. They've got a big flintlock on them made for cannons. And so I was like, okay. So military, state police kicked in. I said, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
And I just said,
solve the problem.
What are they going to do?
Yeah.
Kick me off? They just had one leave. They don't need us to go. So I had 4 cannons, and I was giving orders to the guys running these cannons, and one of the guys screwed up. And he threw the lanyard down and walked over it and tripped on it, and the flintlock started to go. I saw it happen. I'd already loaded the flintlocks, and I saw the lanyard, and I reached up and caught that flintlock cock with the rock in between the flash pan and with this huge cannon lock. It dug into my skin, a little blood, and I screamed and yelled and told that guy to get back over here and pick up that string, and if you let it go again, it'll be your ass. Yeah. So I cocked it back, and I go back and kind of hide my hand. Well, unbeknownst to me, there was a couple of assistants that had seen this, assistant prop master seen this happen. And pretty much I was in. That had sealed the deal that Steve's going to be all right. And then they found out that Frank and I made stuff. And so now we were making props on that show. in addition to
for Master and Commander.
For Master and Commander.
Yeah.
So there were like 4 assistant prop masters on that show, and now they're all really good prop masters. So they're calling people now. Their assistants are prop masters. So that family tree's gotten bigger and bigger, and so I get calls from a lot more of those. And there's a lot of more people out there giving my name out. So it just kind of expanded.
Is that the one that you were? You had a small cameo, I guess, a face in the movie. Was that? It seems like there's like a prison scene or something like that, or a locked up scene, and you're in one of the groups of.
Well,
maybe I'm thinking a different movie.
My lump shows up in that movie. There was a shot on second unit, and they wanted the fighting tops in a 3-masted ship. That's the thing you can stand on a mast, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the fighting tops, and so they had Marines up there. They had 4 Marines, and they were going to shoot down at the other ship. Well, the problem was, if you're going to hold a flintlock down, you got to wad it. You got to put something in there to keep the powder from falling out. Generally, we don't wad them, right? If you're shooting level, it's safer. We don't have anything flying out of the barrel. It's just better. But if you're pointing down, you got to wad it with something. And so I told the first AD, I said, that's a problem, right? I said, they're going to have to lower them back down here to me. I'm going to have to load them up. And they're going to have to prime them up there. And they said, it takes too long. Sorry. They said, why don't you get in uniform and we'll put you up there with them and you can reload them after every take. I said, no. And that was a Frank thing, thank goodness. And it's been great ever since. Don't get in front of the camera, because what happens is, and it would have happened on this one, they put you in front of the camera, and now if they have to reshoot that for whatever reason, they find somebody's wearing tennis shoes in the background, and they have to reshoot that, they need you in that shot for continuity. You may be over here on first unit filming gunfire. Right. Right? Well, you can't be in 2 places at once, so don't go in front of the camera. So what they decided is I would get under a black tarp. And so I would lay on the fighting deck, and these Marines would shoot. They'd yell, cut. I'd come out from under the black tarp, load the guns, get under my tarp again. So my lump is in that movie.
Very nice.
Yeah.
It's a lovely lump.
Well, it's as good as a lump can be, I think. I think, if you cast a lump in the future, I'm your guy.
I don't have a resume for lump in a movie, but you do.
Right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, you would get that gig.
I don't know how many people do. Right? And all you got to do is sit still, and I'm real good at that. So yeah, no, it's fine.
So how many movies have you worked on?
I don't know. With props and being on set, somewhere around 18, I think. I honestly haven't counted lately.
But and now you have screen credits. You're getting credits for that,
right?
Now that's a big deal, right? Is that an issue? I don't want to mean like pride for you. I'm just saying to have a credit in a movie.
It's cool. I'm not gonna lie. It's cool. You're sitting there in the theater and your name rolls up. I mean,
pretty cool.
It doesn't suck.
Yeah.
But for instance, Master and Commander, by some snafu, we got left off the credits. Now we're still on IMDb credit. We still have it there. But the actual credits rolling at the end of the movie, we were left off. And we got a phone call and apologies and all that, but yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool. It doesn't mean a whole lot. Most people check your resume. They'll check IMDb and see what you've actually done. Like, I'm not credited at all, for the Jurassic World knives. I mean, you have to reach a certain criteria on set to be credited in the credits after the movie.
Oh,
right. So, so many days on set, that there's always a criteria before. Otherwise, like if you put every contractor in there, like me that made the knife, you'd be watching credits for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Because, they're sourcing stuff from everywhere. So there is criteria.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, there's several out there that.
So 18 movies or so. That's working on set. 18 movies.
No, that's both.
Okay.
Yeah, might be on set or might be making a prop knife or something else. Mostly knives.
Yeah. So I know recently you went to Hawaii.
Yeah, I was in Hawaii, and I'm really looking forward to that show coming out. It's Jason Momoa and Chief of War. It's a vista we've never seen. It's photography I don't think we've ever seen on film or TV. It's 18th century Hawaii, and it's going to be epic. I haven't seen the show, so I can't tell you it's a good show. I don't know. But I guarantee you the photography is going to be cool. It's going to be something we've never seen. The props were spectacular. Jane Gulick did the props. She was the prop master. Her team knocked it out of the park. There's stuff you've never seen before. And she had a lot of native craftsmen make this stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's beautiful. It's absolutely stunning. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. And we had flintlocks, and
that's been about a year ago or so.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So sometimes it takes a couple of years for those movies to come out.
It does. And I don't know what's taking this one so long, but it's a little longer than normal.
Yeah.
But they say it's soon, and it'll be on Apple TV. Mm. I'm looking forward to that because I think it's going to be really cool.
Can you give a rundown of some of the movies you've worked on? Let's talk a minute about sex. Sex is part of life. It's beautiful, and it's essential to living a great life. Enter my friends at Shameless Care, who have created something cool for your personal health care. Shameless Care offers a variety of products you may be interested in. ED treatments, STI treatments, STD testing. So how does it work? Well, that's the easy part. You go to shamelesscare.com, you choose the product you're interested in, you complete an online questionnaire, which is reviewed by a medical doctor, by the way. Pay for the product, and in a couple of days, discreet packaging arrives right to your doorstep. Their customer service is second to none. They're always responsive, and they care. Listen, Ashley's the best. Tell her I said hello. They're a small business ran by people like you and me, and they're incredible. The best part? We can save you some money. Click on the link in the show notes. Use the code JUDE at checkout. It's JUDE. And save $30 on your first purchase. That's not bad, huh? Visit our website to learn more. Shamelesscare.com. And don't forget the promo code JUDE.
Wow. Master and Commander on set you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Master and Commander. Beautiful creatures. I should look at my IMDb page.
We'll pull it up. How about that?
There
we have a puller-upper person.
Yeah. Point of Honor was another one.
This is all I can find. Those four.
So just 4. You've only been to 4.
Yeah, I've only been to 4.
Yeah.
So scroll down and keep going. All right, there's all of them.
Oh. Duh.
So I guess the last one was it's in the coming. If you scroll back up, you'll see upcoming. That should be Chief of War and American Primeval. That was in Santa Fe, New Mexico. That was just this year. And who knew that New Mexico is really cold in the winter? It's brutal.
Is it really?
It's absolutely brutal. It's
I wouldn't have guessed that.
I wouldn't have either. I was excited because I was going in the winter of this year, and I thought, it's going to be warm. I'm going to,
Were you in the northern part?
Yeah, Santa Fe.
Now I wouldn't expect Santa Fe to be cold.
Yeah, they call it the high desert, and you're at 7,400 feet, no matter what.
Yeah,
and yeah, it's brutal.
We had a client that was from northern Arizona, which I guess is kind of lumped in there because he talked about New Mexico, and I made the same assumptions of not knowing. He's like, no, man, let me plan you a vacation. It's all 4 seasons here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I was like, really? And he's like, well, everybody thinks it's not, but it's all 4 seasons here.
And it's beautiful scenery. The scenery's spectacular. So I guess we're back to this list. There's Master and Commander. And I don't know what order these are in.
I saw you did The Pale Blue Eye.
Yeah.
That's an awesome show.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah. Christian Bale.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a really good show.
Awesome too. That you're called the lead armorer.
Yeah, and those words mean things. Like if there's more than one armor, you're the lead or key. Mm-hmm. If there's only one, you're very often the armor. If you're the number 2 guy or 3 guy, you're an armor. So like in 1923, I was certainly not the number 1 guy. That Harry Lou did that. He's a pro, and he called me in for that, which is great.
Now, is that part of the Yellowstone series?
It is.
Okay.
Yep.
What's that gentleman's name that's doing all that? The producer or the creator of that? Anyway, never mind.
Yeah.
But that's part of that. That's part of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. We filmed a World War I scene. Had, I don't know, a couple hundred guns going off at one time, Maxim or Browning machine gun. It was a pretty epic battle scene. That was a lot of fun.
Now, do you get called in just for like that scene?
Yeah, very often production will try to do all the gunfire in one stretch, right? Films are not usually filmed in sequence, right?
Right.
The Revenant was, but that's an outlier. Most of them are filmed how it suits the production, right? So if they can put all the gunfire into a month period, then they only have to have me there for a month. Fly me out once. I work for a month, fly home. They did not do that on Crossbones, is there somewhere. And that was in Puerto Rico, and they were flying me. I think I flew out to Puerto Rico 6 times. There,
oh, wow.
Worked for a week, flew home. Was off a week, flew out there for 2 weeks, flew home. I got to know the tour bus driver, picked me up at the airport. It was really funny. They, when you pull in there and you're going to the resort, in the back of the bus, the resort bus is a rum bar, and you just help yourself.
That's right.
Right?
We need to do that here.
Yes.
Yeah. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, I don't know.
I might have partaked. Is that a word? Partook?
It is today.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is today. So, that first time I was a little hesitant. I hadn't been here before. I didn't know the people. I was just first time here. I got to find my room. I got to get my way around. So, I was pretty cool,
Mm-hmm.
By the second through the 6th time, hey, what's up, Jose? Head to the back of the bus, throwing my bags down. I'm getting a double, rum and Coke. And everybody knew coming on and say, hey, come on back here. And I was bartending, Yeah. So it got to be kind of funny. But that was different than most. Most try to lump the gunfire together. Sleepy Hollow did that. That was a pilot for the Sleepy Hollow series. Mm-hmm. Beautiful Creatures, I was there for the whole show because they had guns going the whole show.
How do you I don't want to ask you about the major armorer mess up that's in the news over the last couple of years, but you're tasked with the safety of the crew and the actors and stuff on set, right?
That's right.
And so how do you mitigate that, or how do you manage that task?
Number one, you have to be very organized.
Yeah. You
got to be a good leader, and you got to be willing to say no. Okay. So that's where I had an advantage.
Right.
Especially after I retired. I got a paycheck coming in, right?
Right.
I got a pension.
Yeah.
Now I like doing this, and I guess I'm okay at it. They keep calling me back. But like dear Jason Momoa, he bit off a big chunk of that hog's ass trying to do this movie. He was director, he was producer, and he was a main actor.
Oh.
And we had 4 units going on at one time. And he did that very well, to be honest, overall. But there were times when I had to say, no, we can't shoot that way. Right. And you got to have the gravitas to say no. And if
that's exactly where I was going to go with the next question.
And if we don't like that, then we can discuss it, and I can tell you how we can do it safely. And if you still don't like that, then I guess you need to get me a ticket home. Right?
Yeah.
Because I want to work with you. I want to make the show what you want it to be, but I'm going to be safe. And I want to help you get the shot you want. When it comes down to a micro level, I want you to get this shot that you envision in this movie.
We're on the same team trying to get the same thing.
And it might be something as simple as cheating camera, moving the stunt guy a little bit to the right or left, shooting down a clear alley, but cheat camera so it looks like he's in front of the camera. There's things we can do.
Yeah.
And then most of the time, eventually you get there, right, with the first AD. Usually it's the first AD I'm dealing with. And I've really never had a problem with that. After the first week, we come to an understanding that I am there for them to get their shot, but I'm there to do it safely and not get anybody hurt. And if you watched any of the Rust trial, that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case on the directorial end, and it wasn't the case on the armor end.
Mm-hmm.
And that created an atmosphere that was
Toxic
and deadly.
Deadly?
Yeah.
Truly. Are you working with the stars? I hate to use the word stars, but are you working with them?
Yeah, the leads. Because most of the time, they've never shot a flintlock. I mean, if you have a Venn diagram of actors, actresses, and you have in the other circle those that have shot flintlock, wow, where they meet in the middle, that's really small, right?
If even at all.
If they touch, right?
Yeah,
they
right.
may not touch. Well, I know some they will touch now because I've trained them, right? So what we have to do is train them, right?
Yeah.
And we'll have depending on their role and how much gunfire they're going to have, depends on how long it takes. And frankly, some take to it very well. And I was just struck by what's that actor's name? I'm glad he's not going to listen to this. Crossbones.
Oh, Malkovich?
Yeah, John Malkovich.
He may listen to this.
He might. I'll call him, tell him to, because I'm getting ready to brag on him.
He may speak in that Russian accent that isn't like every other movie he makes.
That man can speak like 5 languages.
I know. Yeah.
Fluently.
Yeah.
He's an amazing dude.
I love him. Yeah.
And he had never shot a flintlock, but within 30 minutes, it looked like he'd been doing it all his life because he listened and he absorbed everything.
He seems like a real intellectual, like he would be engaged in it.
He is. And he was outstanding. He was outstanding. I will not name ones on those lists that were not, right? There's no need to, right?
I was going to ask, do egos get involved there?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, there are some that just don't want to train at all. And then you have to go to the first AD and say, hey, Joe Blow hadn't trained. I can't hand him a real gun. Yeah, you can't. No, I can't. He hasn't trained, so I cannot hand him a real gun. I can give him a rubber. We can go from there. They will go to the director. The director will say, Joe Blow, go train now, right? Don't come back until the armor says you're good. But that is the rare exception. Most of them want to they want to look good, right? They want to look like they know what they're doing. David Aiello, Bass Reeves, he wasn't a shooter, right? I think he's British. Nice guy. Never shot in his life, I don't think. Not much. And so we trained a lot. And if you watch Bass Reeves, he's the main character, the African-American, should be one of your heroes. He's one of mine. He was a Texas Ranger, I think the first African-American Texas Ranger, and was a straight-up badass. And in the end, this actor that had never shot a gun, or at least I don't think he had, plays the part and looks like he should. That's when I feel like I've done what I was supposed to do, right? I made him look like he knew exactly what he lived with that gun for 20 years.
Yeah.
And in the end, if you can do that, then you've done your job and keep him safe. But if guys don't want to train, if they don't want to learn, they're not. And they're going to look, it's going to show, right? It's going to show up.
Yeah. And nobody wants that.
No, it just looks bad. It's bad on everybody.
Yeah. Do you meet the people, and I don't know any of these folks, right? So I'm speaking purely from whatever I know, but, guys like Tom Cruise are rumored to be really engaged and want to learn and do the stunts themselves. And do you see those type of people?
I do.
Yeah.
And some of them love it. From what I understand, people that have worked with Tom Cruise, he is one of those guys.
Yeah.
He's done a lot of his own stunts and likes to shoot. Keanu Reeves, John Wick, dude can shoot. I mean, if you put him in a match with shooters, he's going to shoot and he's going to do well because he trains, right? That look doesn't come by accident.
Right.
Now, some of it is, as we know, is a little hokey, right?
Right.
You're not going to do what he's doing. But the fact that he can do it and make it look like that,
Yeah.
that's because he worked, right?
That's right.
So a lot of these guys do want to do it and do want to learn and do great, do a real good job. And so that makes it fun for us, right? When somebody's engaged and wants to learn and soaks it up, just like John Malkovich.
Yeah.
30 minutes. And he had to do a one-handed reload on a pistol, a flintlock pistol. Not an easy thing.
Yeah.
So I choreographed the steps and showed it to him. And like I said, a half hour, it looked like he had done it all his life.
There's not many, I think, of those folks that I'd say I'd like to have a bourbon with, or maybe sit down and have a cigar or something with, but he would be one that would make my list.
I agree. I agree. He's an interesting fellow.
Seems like he is.
Yeah. Real interesting. He's very quiet and very reserved, I think, from what I saw. He's not making jokes and
Right.
jumping around the set. But when it's time to work, there's nobody better.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he's an interesting guy.
What's next for you, man? What are you up to next?
Working on knives. I'd like to say I'm working every day in the shop, but some days I'm planting tomatoes, or maybe just drinking a beer in the shop.
Right.
But yeah, making knives, and I think I've got a show in Montana coming up in July.
You still have your classes?
I do. I've got one of those coming up in May.
Yeah.
That one's in Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that one will be good. And I still do them at my shop too.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm familiar with the ones at your shop.
Yeah. 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 I teach at the Southern Ohio artisan workshops. It's a neat outfit, and you can learn some neat stuff. Tomahawk making, weaving, a lot of neat crafts are taught at the Southern Ohio workshop.
Well, on top of that, let's tie in really quick. We're getting close on time, but I mean, you make your own sheaths and stuff too, right?
I do.
That's all your leather work.
It is.
So it's not just the knives. You're doing the whole thing.
Yeah. Now for the Jurassic World knife, that was somebody else. That was a fellow out of Oak Ridge, Tennessee. It was Dennis. And I don't think he's doing leather work anymore, but he was I'm sure still a very good leather worker. But for the knives I sell, out of my shop, that's all my leather.
Yeah.
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 Not a fan.
You're not?
No, not a fan.
You do it because you have to, I guess?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, it's just not as rewarding to me as making the knife. When I make the knife, if it's, anything, really, any knife, even small ones, a small hunter or something, when I finish it, I want to look at it. I want to sit down and fondle a little bit. I'll sharpen on it, even if it doesn't need it,
Yeah.
Just because I want to feel it. I want to handle it. It's my baby. It's going to be gone here in a day or two. And,
Yeah.
I finish the sheath. I'm like, oh, good riddance to you. I'm done.
That's really interesting to me that you have that approach to that sheath, because to me, it's an extension of your artistry.
It may be, but it's not my favorite part. It's not something.
That's fair.
I mean, if I never had to make another one, I probably would take that deal. I've got a fella in Bourbon County that is a good leather worker, and he's made some sheaths for me. But I'm not sure he loves doing it. Yeah, that's one of mine. And
to your point, you're not branding the sheath. That's not.
I do actually.
Well, you brand it, but that's not your calling card. Your calling card's not the sheath. Your calling card's the knife.
That's right. And
it's an accessory piece. I don't want to. Yeah. I don't want to belittle it any, but
no. But it's not easy. That sheath right now would probably cost you almost $100.
Sure.
So you have to add that to the cost of the knife.
There's a lot of work in that sheath right there.
There is.
It looks simple on the surface, but there's a lot of work in that.
Yeah. And it's like the knife making. And how long did it take you to make that sheath? Say, about 30 years.
Right.
I started on this stuff about 30 years ago. And to that point, 30 years ago, that sheath would have taken me a week and a half because I'd have screwed up 14 of them.
Right.
Right. And I'd have finally got one after a week and a half. So that sheath took me a week and a half. Now, if I can do it in 4 hours, it took me 30 years to get there.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And so and I tell people when they get serious about asking, I say, look, you're not paying for the time it took me to make this knife. You're paying me for the 30 years it took to learn to make this knife in 3 hours.
Yeah.
Right. Could I make this knife 30 years ago in 3 hours? No, I could not have, for a lot of reasons. So you're paying for 30 years of what I've learned and the mistakes I've made and how to fix them and how not to do them again. So that's what you're paying for.
Yeah.
So, you know, if I'm at the table and somebody says, you know, how long did it take you to make that knife? Well, the answer is always 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see that knife? And I'm getting ready to close up. Do you see that knife in its final state as you start to make it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Almost 100%.
Yeah.
Like I said,
because the watercolors, whatever.
Yeah. The fancier stuff, the bigger stuff that I know is going to take a week or two. I'll do a drawing, very often do a watercolor. I'll see it. I'll live with it a day or two, tweak some things till I get it. Yeah, that's not right. That's not where I was going with that. The last buoy, it's on here if she wants to pull it up. I had the drawing, I bet you for, are we going the wrong way? We're going the wrong way, I think. I really don't know, to be honest.
I think that would be older, wouldn't it?
This would be older, yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess it is. Oh, okay. It should be. You know what? I didn't post it because I got shadow banned.
See,
that's what happened. I was posting.
Facebook?
No. Oh, I don't even know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the one you just said available.
Yeah.
That's
right.
on Facebook.
That's on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I lived with that drawing for, I don't know, a few days. And then I realized I didn't like
That's it there, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Can you see the Corvette in there?
I'm going to say yes.
That's what I want you to say. Absolutely.
I see inspired by the new Corvette.
That's right.
I don't see a Corvette.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. But the whole thing. I mean, yeah. Anyway. So yeah, I lived with that drawing for a couple of days and tweaked it every day until I said, all right, this is what I want to make. And
there you go.
And there you go.
How do people find you?
Instagram and Facebook. You might need to help me out. My Instagram is Auvenshine.
We'll have all the links on the show notes. You don't have to worry about that part.
_knives. Yeah. And then the proper Facebook page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put the link in there.
Any upcoming movies, upcoming shows you want to say that you're working on? You may not be able to.
Yeah. Normally you can say what you're working on. The one in Montana will be a Jim Bridger series, which I love the story of Jim Bridger, American Mountain Man. If right now we don't have a contract, but it could happen.
Yeah.
It looks like it's going to. Right now that's it. There was going to be another one starting next month, and don't know where that one's at yet.
Yeah. They'll just come in one day.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah.
And it could be like the one in Virginia. The producers didn't want an armor because they said this was pre 9/11 or pre Rust, and said we don't need armors. You guys can run the guns. And the prop master said, no, we need an armor. So they had called me a month before, and they ghosted me. About 3 days before they were supposed to start photography, they called me back and said, Steve, will you come in? And I said, dude. And he said, I know. So I said, all right, because I already had stuff ready. I was ready to go.
Yeah.
So I went, and turns out the prop master, a hell of a prop master, Blanche Sindelar, I'll just mention her name. She said, if I don't have an armor by X date, I'm getting on a plane going back to California. Peace out. And, they didn't call her bluff. So,
yeah.
But it was that date they called me and said, all right, Steve, come on. So,
oddly, it works out.
Yeah. So there was no line item for me
right.
in the budget. They had to put me in as assistant prop master or something. I don't know. So, it's funny how it works out. Now, They haven't had to do that post Rust. Sure. Nobody's complaining about having an armor on set.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
They get it.
Yeah.
They get it.
Man, we could sit here and talk all night.
We could.
Will you come back and share some stories sometime soon with us?
Sure.
Anything else you want to put on here before we close out?
No, not that I can think of.
Yeah.
Just hope it doesn't rain on the way home.
Thanks for sharing your time with us and
Absolutely.
some of your expertise. For those that are listening, you need to find the links on the show notes and go take a look at Steve's work. It's truly something to look at and something to behold. And, there's a lot of humility in the words that he's sharing here with you. But the products themselves are unbelievable. And listen, you've done charitable work. You've done charitable work for me and got those things, some knives put out there. So there's a lot of stuff we could talk about, but, you just need to know we're talking truly a true artist and somebody. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah.
And when you get down to that bottom of the list and you don't have anybody else, you call me again.
I'll call you again.
Yeah.
That's what we did this time.
That's right.
All right, man. Well, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
And we'll see everybody next time.
It was a pleasure.
Yep.